Welcome back to the Flower Garden. My name is Lisa, and in today's video I wanted to talk about the 6 books that I think everyone should read who is spiritual or not spiritual and just wants to work on their mindset. But these are my personal favorite books, so let's get into it. So the first book is my favorite book of all time. It is a book that has been on this channel for a while. I talk about it all of the time, and that book is The Journey of Souls by Michael Newton. So the reason that I love this book is because Michael Newton is a hypnotherapist, and he pretty much brings a scientific perspective and actual, hard facts from his case studies working with his hypnotherapy clients about what they have shared when it comes to lives between lives. So the name is very self-explanatory. It is about the journey of souls, right? So it's about the journey that our souls go through reincarnation and in between incarnations. What do our souls do in between incarnations? What are their goals? What are they trying to achieve? Why do we incarnate? All of those are questions that the book answers for us. And I love it a lot because anytime that I tell people about the concepts from this book, nobody has ever told me like, oh, that's bullshit, that's not real. Like, not a single person that I've talked to about this book has ever said, yeah, that all sounds like a load of crap. Every single person that I've talked to about this book, it's like it hits a knowing inside of you that it's this deep truth that you've always known, but you just didn't know how to put it into words. And I feel like this book really puts it into words for us. And the reason this book is really important to me is this is actually what got me into spirituality in the first place. It's what got me interested in knowing more about lives between lives, knowing more about our souls. And then that just kind of took me down all of the different rabbit holes that I now live deeply inside of. But yeah, so if you are interested in learning more about, our life between lives and having it be explained from the souls themselves. So what Michael Newton does is he puts people into a superconscious state, and that transcends the conscious, the subconscious, and then goes straight to the soul. And so it's basically the souls are directly telling him about their experiences, and just it's like you're listening to all of their different stories and adventures. So it's put in a really fun way, in a really easy to comprehend way. Obviously, these concepts aren't easy to understand, but they're put in a really easy way for us to read through and understand, even though after you've read it, you're going to be like, okay, well, this brings up so many different questions. And that's why there's like 4 different books that Michael Newton wrote on the topic. But Journey of Souls is the first one and the one that got me to fall in love with spirituality, so it is first on the list. The second book that I want to talk about is A New Earth by Eckhart Tolle. And the reason that I really love A New Earth is because I feel like it is pretty much a light worker's guide to mindfulness. And I want to kind of talk about The Power of Now versus A New Earth, because those are 2 of his different books that talk about similar concepts. I tried to get into The Power of Now, and I couldn't because it felt like, one, it was just repeating all of the same things that he talked about in A New Earth. And then 2, it felt very surface level, like it was kind of things that I already understood to a certain degree. And so A New Earth I really like because it talks about enlightenment and spiritual awakening, and it really puts it in a perspective that we can understand. It really puts things into a perspective where you think, wow, I'm not alone, like other people experience this. And it talks about, the Great Awakening. A New Earth is just all about pretty much the Great Awakening, but it's put in a mindfulness state. It's put in through the lens of our consciousness, right? Like what's happening to our collective consciousness as the Great Awakening happens. The third book that I want to talk about is called Mindset by Carol S. Dweck. And the reason that I really like this book is because it puts limiting beliefs into a very simple context. So when we think about limiting beliefs, I feel like there's a lot of just complicated aspects when it comes to limiting beliefs, right? Because limiting beliefs are a product of your ego. And so then you're like, okay, well then how do I work with the ego and then work through my limiting beliefs? And then it's also a part of doing inner child work. So then you're like, okay, well then how do I work through my inner child problems to work through these limiting beliefs? So there's a lot of different avenues that you can travel down when it comes to limiting beliefs. But Carol S. Dweck is I believe she's a psychologist. I can't remember exactly what it is, but she's got a doctorate in something in that field. And what she did was she studied children and the way that they deal with failure. And what she found out is it all comes down to two different mindsets, the fixed mindset and the growth mindset. And so when we put this in a spiritual context, right, in the work that I do with my clients working through limiting beliefs, a fixed mindset is basically anything that is limiting. So fixed mindsets are limiting beliefs, okay? So fixed mindset is anything where somebody believes that they just have a fixed set of traits, or that anything that they're skilled or unskilled in is just a fixed trait, that it's just something that it is the way that it is. It's not anything that can be grown, it's not anything that can be developed, it's just this is how I am. And some examples of fixed mindsets include, well, I'm just not good at math, or I'll never be able to do XYZ because of XYZ. So it's these fixed mindsets where you think that you can't develop any skills. Whereas a growth mindset is the mindset that anything can be developed, right? That you can pick up any skill and get good at anything. So then when it comes to failures, you don't see failures as an end to something, or that it defines you as a person in any way. Because then you see failures as just an opportunity to grow. You fail and you go, okay, well, that just means that I need to get better at the skill, and then I won't fail again. Whereas with a fixed mindset, somebody who fails thinks that, oh my God, this defines who I am as a person because I'm not good at this and I'll never be good at this. So it's a very humiliating, embarrassing thing. And so in a way, you're just constantly avoiding failure as much as possible. And that means you're not even looking to do anything new, right? So that puts you in this box, okay? So I think that this book really puts limiting beliefs into perspective for us in a very scientific, data-driven way, because it's not talking about it in all these mystical ways in which I'm used to explaining limiting beliefs in, but it talks about it in a very straightforward way, scientific. It's just easy to comprehend. And it's easy to believe because you're like, oh, there's science behind this, and she studied this for years, so this must be true. You're not like, I don't know about this inner child, higher self, blah, 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 shadow work shit that, it's like it's all happening in this mystical shadow realm. And I feel like this makes it much easier to understand all of the shadow work realm that we try to explain through all those avenues in a very simple way that anyone can understand, whether or not you believe in law of attraction, or whether or not you believe in, positive thinking or your power to change your reality. This will put limiting beliefs into perspective for you, regardless. The fourth book that I want to talk about is called Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert. And you guys probably know Elizabeth Gilbert from her book Eat, Pray, Love, which was a huge hit and then had a movie that starred Julia Roberts. But she also wrote a book called Big Magic. And Big Magic is actually all about, she talks about it in a context of being a writer and how she generates ideas as a writer. But it goes so much further than that, because she introduces the concept that ideas are actually their own independent beings, and that we are basically just channels. We are just conduits for these ideas, and that when an idea comes to us and we manifest it into reality, we're actually just in partnership with that idea. Okay, so it's not that we're creating anything by ourselves, right? That these ideas are just coming from us, but rather she puts ideas and creation into this very interesting spiritual context that is really fun to read about. And it's really fun to read about her own experiences with this, because she has had some really crazy things happen when it comes to having an idea about something and then, not being able to develop the idea, and then it just kind of gets away from her and she never writes the book. And then like a year later, having someone else have the exact same idea and actually bringing it into life, and her being like, what the hell, I literally had this exact idea. So she kind of explains, you know, the concept of how multiple people can have the same idea at once, or if you've ever had the experience where you're watching a movie and you're like, oh my God, they stole that idea from me. I have this, I wanted to create this 3 years ago. And what actually happened was probably that the idea was just planted in your mind and in the producer's mind, and the producer had means to make that idea happen. So it ended up happening, and with you, the idea just kind of, you know, wasn't there. So it does make it much, I think that it really humbles us, because it reminds us that, yes, we are in control of our lives, but we're not necessarily the ones that are constantly driving the wheel. Our ego really likes to think that, you know, we're so special and that we're XYZ, whatever. But I think that this book really puts things into perspective for us when it comes to idea creation and, you know, art and things like that, because it reminds us that we're actually in partnership with the universe. It's not just us creating everything all the time. And I think it also takes the pressure off of us to constantly feel like you're responsible for if an idea doesn't come to fruition, or if an idea is bad and then something bad happens because it was a bad idea, right? So I think that it also takes the pressure off of us to constantly feel like, oh my God, like, you know, I made this mistake or whatever it is. You realize, oh, ideas are their own beings, and I get to choose whether I want to co-create with this idea or not, right? Whether I want to bring it into fruition or not. So it puts some responsibility on you, but also takes a lot of responsibility off, because you don't feel bad about, oh, well, if I don't bring this idea into fruition, then I'm just doomed and whatever it is, because this is my idea, when really it wasn't. It was just kind of floating around and came to you and was like, hey, do you want to work together? And you're like, no thanks, and then it just kind of floated off to another place. The fifth book that I want to talk about is The Four Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz. And the reason that I really like this book is because it presents a lot of ancient concepts that have been around forever, that our ancestors have known about when it comes to mindfulness, working with our ego, training our ego, you know, staying humble, all those different concepts. It presents them in a very simple way, and it presents them in a way which, like I said, these concepts have been around forever. So you're not going to necessarily see anything new, but it's very profound information, okay? And I see actually these same concepts appear in different cultures and different works all of the time when it comes to spirituality. And I actually started reading A Course in Miracles with my friend recently, and I kid you not, like almost every other sentence I was like, this is what Don Miguel Ruiz talks about, this is what Don Miguel Ruiz talks about, this is what Don Miguel Ruiz talks about. So I kept being like, he uses these same terms, that life is a dream, that, you know, we are just all these different things. It's presented in many different cultures. So I think that the Four Agreements puts these very powerful concepts in a very simple way to understand. So if you want to get some very profound spiritual teachings in a very simple presentation, this is the book for you. And then the last book that I want to talk about is The Raw Material. So The Raw Material is, just a disclaimer, it's really out there. It's actually a channeled work. So what happened was, you know, this group of let's say, what do you call them? They're not ufologists. They are not paranormal researchers. They are an in-between of ufologists and paranormal researchers. And what they did is they actually channeled the social memory complex RA. R-A. That's how it's spelled. So Ra is an alien social memory complex. And what a social memory complex is it's basically a society of some type of beings that evolve to a point where they have merged their consciousness into one. So that's what creates a social memory complex. They're all of these different beings that then merge into one being. and that is how they live and exist and, travel through the universe. But Ra actually has a lot to do with our history. Ra came and was very involved with the ancient Egyptians, with building the pyramids, and all those different things. So now, because Ra got involved with humanity, they're karmically tied to humanity, so they're kind of just here making sure that we are getting, the information that we need and, aligning us to the law of one, which is the law which states that we are all one, that we are all connected, that we all come from one divine creator, and that we are all the one divine creator experiencing itself. So that is the law of one. And it's very dense information. Reading the Ra material is hard. There's like 5 different books, I believe. It can be really hard because the way that Ra communicates is very, it's like doctorate level scholarly reading. It's like there's a lot of terms that are being used that you may not understand, and you're like, okay, I feel like I need to Google this and figure out what this means. So it's very dense material, but it is very valuable material, and it puts a lot of things in our history into perspective. It talks about enlightened beings. It talks about mindfulness, meditation, healing. It talks about a lot of different concepts. And the way that Ra communicates is actually through channeling. So they had a channeler in their group. I can't remember her name now, but she channeled Ra. So basically what they do is, her consciousness basically kind of takes a step back, and Ra is able to communicate through her vessel. So she's actually speaking, right? But it's not her speaking, it's Ra speaking through her. Okay, and I think that in religious terms, this may be called like spirit communication, or there's a name for it that I can't remember, but it's when God takes over and starts speaking through you. It's the same concept except consensual. God doesn't just show up and be like, oh, hello. Although I don't know anything about that, so don't even listen to me when I say that. I don't know anything about religious God speaking things, channeling things. All I know is this. So with the Ra material, it's really dense information, but it's really useful because Ra is just kind of here, just hanging out, like, hey, I'm providing you some good info. Here you go. So it's really nice. It's really good. I think it's great. There are so many topics in those books that I couldn't just tell you this is what it's about, because it's about everything. So I think it's a really good read if you're up for some very hard thinking and deciphering and just reading through, trying to read between the lines in a way, because you're like, okay, this is what it says, but how does this relate to this, and how does this relate to that? And then just it presents so many more questions that you didn't have before. Okay, well, those are all of the books that I wanted to talk about when it comes to the books that I will continue rereading over and over again until the end of time. And the reason that I chose these specific books is because all of these books are things that you can keep returning to and just get new information from it every time. Like something aligns even more and something resonates even more, and depending on what's going on in your life, you'll be like, man, this, like, I really needed to hear this just now. So for me, all of those books do that for me. Anytime that I'm feeling kind of lost, or I'm thinking, oh, well, I feel like I'm just, whatever, if I'm uninspired or whatever it is, I just go back to these books, and they always kind of align me back to the truth that I need to know. And all of these books, to me, in a way, are just pieces of the truth that make my life make more sense and make life in general make more sense for me, and what I do makes sense for me. So if you're interested in also, getting these little puzzle pieces of truth, then you can check out any of those books. But in the meantime, while you wait for those books to, come to your house, if you bought them on Amazon, or if you do go out and buy them or haven't bought them, whatever it is, while you're waiting, you can turn on the notification bell, because in the next video, I'm going to be talking about why I am not afraid of the dark side, whether you want to call it the secret government, the Illuminati, the cabal, right? I just want to talk about why I'm not afraid of that, even though I have a lot of different beliefs that most people would look at and be like, how do you not live in fear at all times? So go ahead and turn on the notification bell for that video, so that way you're notified when that video comes out. But if you also want to watch more videos that are similar to this one, that are about the law of attraction, that are about positive thinking, mindfulness, aliens, then you can check out the videos right here. And until next time, I hope you have a good week, a good day. Bye.